The story begins with Slad getting kicked out of the party by the hero named Ares, and knowing that Ares is the only one who can defeat the Demon Lord, Slad decides not to argue and leaves without making a fuss. However, Slad can't help but wonder if the hero will be all right without his fully automated buff skill. The next morning, Slad wakes up and finds that he has no money or food to eat, which prompts him to start looking for a job. For this, he heads to the Adventurers Guild, where he notices a granny carrying groceries on her own. Slad offers to help her out and uses his buff skills on her, which makes her body feel lighter than before. Apparently, this skill is fully automated and cannot be controlled at will. However, it tends to activate each time Slad finds people he wishes to help. After dropping her off at a nearby shop, the granny offers to buy him some food, and Slad, whose stomach is emptier than a Discord moderator's dating history, gladly accepts. Following that, Slad heads inside the guild, where a hot receptionist welcomes him and asks him to fill out a form. After he's done filling it out, the receptionist goes away to double-check the information, when suddenly, Slad hears a girl yelling at someone who purposefully grabbed her peaches. After taking a good look at the elf girl, Slad notices that her clothes are showing more than they are covering and figures that the guy she's blaming is most likely a veteran adventurer. Slad decides to intervene and asks the girl to leave it at that, but instead she begins yelling at Slad as well, telling him to mind his own business. The hairy men agree as well, saying that all he was doing was trying to give the elf a warm welcome. Seeing her get even more furious, Slad lets her know that going against an adventurer more powerful than her is not a good idea. Furthermore, he tells the adventurer that what he did wasn't right, which causes that dude to get mad, and he throws a glass full of beer at Slad's face. Following that, he grabs Slad by his collar, saying that cocky people like him need to be taught a lesson. However, Slad replies that they shouldn't do this inside the guild and suggests heading outside, to which the adventurer agrees. Once they are outside, the elf girl tries to calm down the situation by admitting her fault, but that adventurer replies that it has nothing to do with her now, as it's between him and Slad. Before long, a crowd gathers around the two of them, and the adventurer tells Slad that he's going to expose him in front of everyone. With that, he charges Slad, and at the same time, the elf girl, who is inside the guild, gets told that the adventurer Slad is fighting is named Ganza, and there's no one in the guild who dares to defy him. After hearing this, she starts to regret her decision, as the only reason Slad got into a fight is because of her. Before long, that receptionist returns and asks the elf about Slad. She informs the receptionist that someone named Ganza took him outside, and after hearing this, the receptionist starts to panic and runs outside, saying that they need to stop Ganza as he is in danger. Meanwhile, Slad easily manages to dodge all the attacks Ganza tries to land, which annoys Ganza as he questions if Slad really is a rookie. However, Slad refuses and lets Ganza know that he's just pretty slow. Before long, Ganza starts getting exhausted, making the crowd wonder if Ganza has gone weak. Slad advises Ganza to stop, which enrages him, and he tries punching Slad once again, but to his surprise, his arm falls to the ground. This makes him question if Slad used some kind of magic, to which Slad disagrees, saying that his skill automatically decided that Ganza was an enemy and started making him weaker. Additionally, he informs Ganza that it's a unique skill, which are something that can only be possessed by one person in the world, a gift bestowed by God only once in a lifetime. If that's the case, Ganza can't figure out the reason Slad revealed something like this in front of everyone. Slad replies that it's because he wants Ganza to live and asks him to surrender. When Ganza disagrees, Slad reveals that if he doesn't admit defeat, his bones will start breaking little by little, and before long, his heart will be crushed. However, Ganza stays persistent and tells Slad that it won't be that easy, when suddenly, the automated debuff ability increases its effects, making Ganza get crushed by the weight of his own armor. Following that, Slad warns Ganza that if this continues, he'll die and asks Ganza to surrender once again, but Ganza can't seem to put his ego aside. Just then, the receptionist draws Slad's attention by calling him the triple S rank adventurer, telling him that the guild master wishes to see him. Ganza freaks out after hearing this and ends up losing consciousness, which works for the best, as due to this, the hostility disappears. Just then, the busty elf comes running towards Slad and gives him a hug. While Slad tries his best not to get bricked up, the elf mentions that she was scared that Slad might get hurt because of her. Slad apologizes for making her worry, and the elf introduces herself as Ethica. Simultaneously, the crowd begins to discuss how there's no way Slad can be a triple S-rank adventurer when out of nowhere. The guild master appears, and without wasting a second, bows down in front of Slad, apologizing for allowing one of his adventurers to cause trouble. Later, the two of them sit in the guild master's office, where Slad informs him that he's now a former adventurer. While Slad's actual abilities are quite average, his two unique skills fully automate buff and debuff, helping him make his allies stronger and enemies weaker. Thanks to this, he achieved great things and was called a triple S-rank adventurer. Eventually, the Guildmaster questions the reason behind Slad's arrival, to which Slad replies that he is running short on cash. But the Guildmaster finds it hard to believe, as someone who has reached the triple S rank should have wealth, status, and face at his disposal. Nonetheless, the Guildmaster further informs him that if he has an S rank badge or higher, then dining and lodging at the guild establishment are free of charge, and just like that, Slad finds himself standing in front of a luxurious palace. Suddenly, he hears a sound but fails to notice Ethica, who is hiding behind a tree, stalking him. On the other hand, Slad's old party members refuse to believe that Slad would just walk away on his own and decide to search for him. Both the girls find it hard to believe that Slad can run away on his own, and Dacia mentions that she won't be satisfied until she hits him. However, Rimuri reminds her that Slad is not that kind of person, as he's the one who taught her the common language from scratch, despite her being a half-demon. Meanwhile, Ares can't do much but stare at them as they run away in search of Slad. On the other hand, Slad is present at an antique store and finds a book that describes characters from each race. He is present there to find more information about elves when out of nowhere, Ethica appears and falls on top of him. Apparently 1 hour ago, Slad asked to take a job of picking ice slime from the ice cave because he wanted to eat the ice slime candy as a reward. However, instead of picking something so easy, the Guildmaster advised Slad to defeat a dragon or something, but Slad wasn't a fan of doing that much work. Just then, Ethica came running and showed Slad a job she found. As Ethica can't do many quests due to her low rank, she wants Slad to join her and help her out. Seeing that the job is about goblin slaying, Slad agrees, and so does the Guildmaster, as he sees this as a good opportunity for someone new like Ethica to be trained properly. Due to this, Slad found this shop to gather the bare necessities for his adventure. To his surprise, Ethica informs Slad that she found the dagger he was looking for, but can't figure out the reason he needs it. Before Slad gets the chance to explain, the shop owner returns and yells at the two of them for making a mess while he was gone. On the other hand, the receptionist asks the Guildmaster if that was really just a job of eliminating goblins, as someone like the Guildmaster doesn't back out so easily. The Guildmaster replies that while it's an ordinary job, the two veteran parties who accepted this earlier haven't returned, and just in case, he thought of sending a triple S rank. At the same time, the two of them enter the forest, and Slad informs Ethica that while goblins aren't really strong on their own, they can be really dangerous when they form groups. They also tend to kidnap women and have a habit of getting freaky without any second thought. Slad continues yapping about the goblins, but eventually stops after realizing that he's talking a little too much. But to his surprise, Ethica doesn't seem to mind at all, and instead, she is happy to see him having fun, as Ethica thought Slad might be forcing himself to accompany her. Before long, they come across a goblin footprint, and after following it, they manage to find their base. Ethica realizes that she hasn't told Slad about her skill and summons a wind spirit named Sylph. Seeing this makes Slad realize that Ethica is the spirit priestess, and remembers that being a spirit priestess is a rare skill that increases her powers the more skin she exposes. It now makes sense to him why she is wearing such a revealing outfit as before. Slad thought Ethica had some kind of exhibitionism fetish. This ends up making her angry, and she yells at him for staring at her body. Following that, Ethica informs him that she will be using Sylph's powers to hit a goblin with an arrow. But Slad advises her to use 3 arrows and hit 3 of them instead. When Ethica starts to hesitate, Slad makes sure to motivate her and uses his fully automated buff ability to increase her stats. Thanks to this skill, she easily manages to target 3 goblins at once and sends them crashing into a mountain. With that, they walk towards the injured goblins, and without wasting a second, Slad stabs it in the throat and beheads the goblin. Ethica begins to wonder if she missed, but Slad disagrees, saying that there's no way she could have missed with his skill. After that, Slad takes out his dagger and begins cutting more of the goblin's body. Ethica gets freaked out seeing this, and Slad lets her know that he's just taking the reward parts, which can be used as materials, and to prove to the guild the number of hunters they have defeated. Furthermore, he tells Ethica that being an adventurer is not as noble as being a hero. According to Slad, Ethica is too kind, and her sympathy for monsters even diverted her arrows from a mortal path. While Slad doesn't have any skills to teach her, he can still tell Ethica the way to survive as an adventurer. It's best that she starts thinking this way as well, because the only option is to accept this or go back to her hometown. Out of nowhere, a giant hobgoblin appears, running towards them at full speed. Slad freaks out seeing its size and realizes that his fully automated debuff only works if it fights them, and at this rate, they will be blown away before that happens. But to his shock, Ethica jumps in the air, and after telling the hobgoblin not to touch her family, she shoots an arrow towards it, eliminating the goblin in a single strike. Meanwhile, Slad starts to panic after hearing the word family, causing Ethica to freak out and let him know that she didn't mean it like that. Furthermore, she elaborates that since Slad risked his life to save her, he's been like her family ever since. Her selfish desire to protect the people who are important to her shouldn't make her a bad adventurer. Hearing this reminds Slad of the time when his mother informed him that elves usually have a hard time getting along with other races, but once they recognize someone and call them family, they'll form a strong bond and will cherish it for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, Ethica remembers that goblin ears are an important part of many potent medicines and decides to collect them, as they could help a lot of people with their injuries. Slad smiles at her, and after saying that she's really kind, he suggests teaming up with her. On the other hand, another member of the heroes' party decides to leave the group, and when Ares tries to remind her that she will be abandoning her role in saving the world, she instantly appears behind him, asking if he's trying to threaten her. Additionally, she mentions that, unlike Rimuri and Dacia, she doesn't care about the fate of the world and only joined the heroes' party in hopes of getting more treasures from the dungeon. Furthermore, she mentions that it all worked out when the guy Ares called a burden on their team, causing him to get even more enraged. Ares questions what's so special about Slad and tries punching her, but fails to do so and falls onto the ground like a pathetic weakling. As she walks away, Ares comments that it wouldn't make a difference as she never even took part in any battles, and before leaving, she lets Ares know that he will understand soon enough. Some years ago, Ares was titled the hero of the world, and while he didn't really care about saving the world or anything, he felt good seeing people bowing their heads and obeying him. In order to take on the Demon King, Ares made sure to make a party full of thick baddies. However, the king insisted that Slad would be useful and made him a part of Ares' party. It didn't take long for Ares to realize that Slad was in his way, and the girls were not getting charmed by him as he expected. Now he can't understand where things went wrong, as Slad was merely baggage in his eyes. Nonetheless, Ares has decided to let Rimuri and Dacia leave as well if they wish, but not before they get those peaches plowed by him. On the other hand, Ethica and Slad are making their way deeper into the cave. There, she asks if it's better to put out the torch to avoid getting noticed, to which he agrees, asking if she can manage. Ethica reassures him that her eyes will adjust just fine. Currently, Slad is walking behind Ethica, and even if he can't disarm the traps set by goblins, he is sure he can still mimic them. To make this work, Slad asks Ethica to follow behind and keep an eye out using her elven night vision. This makes Ethica question the reason he is so cautious, asking if the hobgoblin they defeated wasn't the king. While Slad agrees that it could be the boss, he can't understand the reason that the hobgoblin was acting so erratically that it didn't even notice them. It almost felt like that hobgoblin was running away from something. Before long, they come across a ceiling filled with bells and, figuring that it must be to alert the goblins, Ethica mentions that she won't fall for something that obvious. But just as she walks past them, Slad yells at her to wait, and simultaneously, the ground beneath her disappears, causing her to fall down. Just in time, Slad manages to grab her hand, saving Ethica's life. She then mentions how clever this trap is for a goblin, and Slad also realizes that the placement of this pitfall is perfect. If this trap is this clever, he is sure that a goblin shaman is involved, and when Ethica asks if they are strong, Slad replies that they can use curses and dark magic. Following that, he starts thinking about many ways to get past this trap while Ethica stands there, looking confused. Just then, Slad remembers her powers and asks Ethica to summon an earth spirit. With that, she summons the Temu version of Pinocchio, and the two of them prepare to put their plan to work. Before long, they manage to attract a couple of goblins in their direction, and just as Slad expected, the goblins seem to know the pitfall location and are deliberately avoiding it. However, it doesn't really matter as Ethica made a pitfall there using her spirits, and after successfully trapping the goblins, she easily blows its head off using her bow and arrow. After a quick celebration, Ethica compliments Slad for coming up with such an amazing plan, to which Slad replies that he figured a smart goblin would let the underlings know the locations of the trap. Additionally, he remembered that the earth spirit Ethica can summon is able to freely control the soil, so he had the spirit expand the existing hole. The goblins who thought it was a safe route fell into the hole. Apparently, this trick of outsmarting the enemy is something he learned from an old comrade. Soon after, they come across a bunch of stuff lying on the ground, but after searching thoroughly, Slad fails to find any kind of treasure. Moreover, there are now 4 paths in front of them, including the one they came from. As there are many footprints in this room, it might be necessary to pass through this room to go in or out of the others. Ethica figures that it means the goblins will pass through here and suggests placing another earth spirit, which can surely defeat them. Slad lets her know that spirits can only appear one at a time, and unless they are taking a break, he'd like the earth spirit to be with them at the front line. Without thinking much, Ethica then ends up summoning a giant one that could fight alongside them, and ends up making one that is way too large. Embarrassed, Ethica starts apologizing, saying that she didn't mean to make it this big, but Slad is well aware that it's his skill's fault that buffed Ethica's stats without her noticing, which is why he asked her to make the smallest size earlier. Just then, one of the goblins comes across the earth spirit, and without a second thought, runs for its life and enters one of the rooms. Slad realizes that the goblins might set up an ambush and block that path using the help of the Earth Spirit. Ethica then suggests blocking all the others as well, apart from the one they will be taking. With that being said, the two of them start working on their plan, and while doing so, Slad begins to wonder when was the last time he found adventuring fun, as when he used to raid dungeons with the hero, he always got yelled at. Luckily, Ethica brings him back to his right state of mind by proudly displaying those two big cannons. Nonetheless, they continue making their way forward, and after seeing a lot of bones along the way, Slad is sure that they will find a shaman ahead. Ethica notices that one of them is a human skeleton when suddenly, a hobgoblin, burning in fire, falls near the two of them. Slad realizes that this fire spell is too strong for a shaman and instantly runs towards the end of the cliff, where he finds the boss. But to his surprise, that isn't a shaman but a rare species of monster called a goblin hag. Apparently, the higher-ranking goblins are categorized into two types. One is the hobgoblin and the other is the shaman. On the other hand, the weaker females are mostly treated like slaves by the male goblins, but in extreme cases, a female can undergo the same mutation as a shaman and end up becoming the rare monster species called the goblin hag. Knowing that the monster is out of their league, Slad suggests retreating and calling for backup. But just then, Ethica points at something, and after taking a closer look, Slad realizes that some of the adventurers are captured by the goblin hag. He is sure that they will be used for some kind of strange ritual, but at the same time, Slad is sure that this is too much for a beginner like Ethica to handle. Before Slad gets the chance to say something, Ethica jumps off the cliff, and at the same time, Slad remembers how he has never met someone weaker than him, as his skill always used to give buffs to his party. This is why Slad always stayed behind, but due to this, he was always the weakest and was often called a burden. But currently the only one who can save Ethica and defeat the goblin hag is him. After realizing this, Slad starts following Ethica and tells her to only take down the enemies around the hag and not touch her, no matter what. As soon as he reaches the ground, a giant hobgoblin appears in front of him. However, thanks to the Earth Spirit, Slad is saved, and as he runs towards the goblin hag, Ethica makes sure to eliminate all the other goblins blocking his way. Eventually, he reaches close to the goblin hag and notices that she is preparing to attack Ethica with a fireball. Without wasting any time, Slad picks up a rock and uses a common skill called Taunt. With that, he throws that rock towards the hag and strikes her head. This shifts her attention towards Slad, but this is exactly what he wanted to happen. The hag then continues making her fireball even bigger to attack Slad and Ethica, who notice this yell as him to run away. But Slad stands there, full of confidence as he realizes that the condition to trigger the fully automated debuff has been met. This causes the fireball to disappear and the hag's magic to instantly deplete. At this point, Slad figures that he must look like a very powerful foe in her eyes, and in order to win the fight, the hag decides to use her poison claws. She then charges Slad, but due to the debuff, her speed decreases, and Slad easily manages to grab her arm. Without wasting a single second, he then takes out his dagger and severs both her arms, making both her magic tool and the poison claws completely useless. With nothing left to fight with, the hag lies on the ground, powerful. Before long, Ethica comes running and Slad decides to tell her everything. He starts off by informing her about his unique ability, and further mentions that the debuff ability drops the target's attack power to its absolute minimum, before accelerating their aging. Ethica calls it a pretty gross skill, and Slad lets her know that if the skill determines that the hostility is gone, everything will return to normal. However, for a female goblin who has lived her entire life in hatred, the concept of forgiving someone might not even exist. Ethica finds it pretty sad and suggests ending things quickly. However, Slad says that it's not an option as goblin hags have a curse called the Death Curse. It is a skill that curses the person who eliminates her, so the only method to eliminate them is by either using a poison or a non-lethal wound that leads to death by blood loss. After hearing this, Ethica starts bawling and mentions that a creature that only lives by hating and cursing others is such a tragic existence. Seeing her cry makes Slad also hope that the goblin hag finds happiness in another life. Eventually, they manage to save the other adventurer and are on their way back, listening to the praises they are showering these two with. Before long, they manage to reach the exit, and after getting out, Slad congratulates Ethica for clearing her first adventure. Additionally, he reminds Ethica that her deepest desires were to protect her family and loved ones. The adventurers she met were strangers at first, but they became the people she wanted to save and ended up protecting them. On their way back to the town, Ethica thanks Slad for everything and mentions that she's glad her first adventure was with him. Following that, she suddenly bows in front of him, requesting Slad to stay at the party with her from now on. To her surprise, Slad agrees, and she starts saying how her skills are starting to improve as well. But at this point, Slad decides to finally tell her the truth and informs her that it was all because of the automated buff. Currently, they are at the tavern where Slad questions if Ethica had too much to drink. to which Ethica replies that it's only natural for her to drink after finding out that it was not her true power. She is disappointed as she thought she was finally going to be of help, but Slad reassures her that she's been a big help, as his skill is incomplete without his party. Still annoyed, Ethica tells Slad that she will be staying at his place tonight. With that, Slad takes her to his house, where she freaks out after seeing such a huge bath. Instantly, Ethica starts revealing her smooth curves in front of Slad, and when he tries to remind her of his presence, Ethica mentions that she doesn't mind if it's him. However, the virgin boy decides to pretend he didn't hear that and runs out of the bathroom. Before long, Ethica returns after taking a bath and enters his bedroom, where she jumps on his bed, telling him how soft and comfy it is. As expected from Slad, he starts staring at Ethica's cheek covers and decides to divert his mind by bringing some snacks. But after returning to the bedroom, he notices that Ethica has already fallen asleep. While he puts a blanket over her, Slad hears her sleep talking, saying that today's adventure was really fun. Hearing this makes Slad once again wonder when he had fun the last time, as before, everyone was just after his skill, and after that, he got invited to join the hero's party. Back in the old continent, his abilities were known far and wide, but in this new continent, Slad is sure that he might be able to start over as an adventurer with Ethica. Later that night, Slad finds a hot, bare-skinned elf named Mitty sitting on top of him, offering to unload all her worries onto her. Furthermore, she asks him to redeem her, willing to devote herself entirely to him. Slad freaks out after hearing this and instantly figures that she is talking about marriage. Apparently, seeing Ethica fall asleep in his bed, Slad couldn't help but get some pretty freaky thoughts when, luckily, he found an S-rank special privilege booklet which gave him a free pass to the Night District. Additionally, unlike other guilds, the girls at this establishment also offer some adventure party-related counseling after the deed. Being an elf herself, Mitty lets Slad know that if someone from the elf race calls him family, it's essentially a marriage proposal. The fact that she called him family instead of a friend is the deciding factor. When Slad argues that elves call people they accept as family, Mitty replies that for an elven woman to recognize a man from another race, the bar is extremely high. But according to her, it's no surprise as Ethica was saved by a stranger, and he was none other than a triple S-rank adventurer. Moreover, she offers to become Slad's second wife, but Slad instantly refuses, letting her know that he is as broke as they come. Nonetheless, Mitty figures that Ethica must only have spirits as friends because their body type is considered chubby for an elf. So men don't even look at them, while other women are often jealous of their spirit-wielding abilities. This makes Slad ask if Mitty is a spirit wielder as well, to which she agrees, letting him know that she has even reached C-rank back in the day. After that, she unexpectedly gets close to his face and kisses his ear, informing him that if Ethica does the same, it means she's giving him the green light. In the end, Mitty requests Slad to take care of Ethica, warning him that while elven women are deeply affectionate, they don't forgive if he betrays them. With that, Slad visits a restaurant where he sees Ethica devouring food and continuing to order more. Slad gets surprised by the fact that his food came as soon as he sat at the table, but at the same time, he doesn't know how to act around Ethica ever since Mitty mentioned marriage. Moreover, Slad is aware that he can't ask her directly as if it were a misunderstanding, he might die of embarrassment. Following that, he goes to the guild and informs the receptionist about defeating the goblin hag. She is quite impressed after hearing this, as a normal party would have been wiped out. Ethica mentions that it's all thanks to Slad, who already knew everything about the hag, which the receptionist doesn't really find strange, as Slad is a triple S-rank after all. Hearing all this makes Slad wonder if being a triple S-ranked adventurer is really that amazing, to which she replies, informing him that he needs warrior aptitude to even qualify as an adventurer, and at least one more rare skill to be even considered an S-rank. Double S-rank is for people who possess unique skills, but they also need big achievements, like saving a country, to earn that title. Then comes the triple S-rank, which means someone who saved the world. This means Slad is considered someone who saved the world, and while he further delves into this topic in his mind, the receptionist kindly asks him to sign a document. Curious, Slad asks if this is for his reward, to which she disagrees, saying that it's a marriage certificate and asks Slad to marry her. Both Slad and Ethica freak out after hearing this, while she continues requesting him to sign the certificate, saying that she wouldn't mind Slad having affairs as well. Just then, Ethica gets in the way but gets told by the receptionist to stay out of this. After thinking about this situation, the receptionist realizes that Ethica must have first dibs and mentions how she can't blame her as being a triple S rank if the ultimate golden ticket. However, Ethica argues that it's not about the rank or money, as all she wants is for Slad not to marry a flat gold digger. After a long heated argument, the receptionist finally gives up, and after Slad rejects her, she accepts this and mentions how she would have regretted not going for it. With that being said, Ethica walks away, seemingly furious, and when Slad wonders if she's mad, the receptionist says that it's only natural, as someone important to her suddenly gets a proposal like that. Furthermore, she asks Slad how he feels about Ethica. After leaving the guild, Slad finds Ethica waiting outside and lets her know that her saying that his rank didn't matter made him really happy. Ethica replies that he doesn't have to thank her and wonders if this is normal in the human city, to which Slad disagrees. However, Ethica still can't help but worry that more such people might approach him. Just then, Slad unexpectedly asks Ethica if she wants to marry him, but instantly takes it back after realizing that his tongue accidentally slipped. Additionally, Slad lets her know that he knows what calling someone's family actually means, causing Ethica to hide her face in embarrassment. She then mentions how grateful she is for him, but at the same time believes that Slad might not have a reason to marry her. To her surprise, Slad asks what will happen if he does have a reason, which makes Ethica panic, and she reminds him that the two of them just met yesterday and rushing into marriage would be crazy. Ultimately, Slad ends up laughing out loud, and when Ethica asks the reason, Slad replies that the way she was acting all shy is pretty adorable. Nonetheless, he then suggests buying some new gear from their reward money, and while she is busy shopping, Slad thinks that maybe he was searching for a girl like Ethica all along. Someone who truly sees him for who he is, but in the end, he decides to take his time figuring this out. Later that day, Slad is told that someone is waiting for him in the lobby of the hotel, and after he goes to meet them, Slad realizes that it's none other than his previous party member named Sicha. She lets him know that she came to meet him because she missed his little ding-dong, but when Slad asks her the real reason, Sicha replies by saying that she has 3 things to tell him. The first one is that the hero's party will be wiped out at this rate, and the world will end. Elsewhere, the hero and his comrades are fighting hard, and after they are done, Desea is shocked that they couldn't finish the monster off in one hit. Furthermore, she mentions how scared she got after it charged at her past the rear guard, which makes Ares question if she's saying he got taken over. Annoyed, Desea replies that she didn't say that, and Rimuri also adds that it has gotten difficult as Slad always used to tell her the characteristics of monsters, including their weaknesses. Desea agrees, thinking how they couldn't find Slad even after searching through the city, and can't understand the reason Ares hasn't looked for other teammates after Sicha left their party. Nonetheless, Ares suggests moving forward, and before long, they come across a wyvern. On the other hand, Slad, who is told that the hero's party will be wiped out, asks Sicha the reason, to which she replies that it's because he left. Sicha further mentions that she checks her condition every morning, and tells him that she has had an easy time opening locks and disarming traps ever since he joined the party. Lastly, she mocks him for not hiding his ability in a better way. The next report she has for him is that Sicha has left the hero's party, and while she feels bad for the girls stuck with Ares, Sicha only bets on things she knows she can win. However, Slad argues that he doesn't believe the hero's party will be wiped out just because he left and believes that Sicha's spot will be filled once they move to a bigger city. But Sicha replies by saying that Slad will leave the city before finding a new member and bets 500 gold on it. Slad reminds her that with her gone, Ares is the only one in the vanguard spot and won't be doing something so reckless. But Sicha asks if Slad really thinks Ares will replace a member in a town that has no A ranks and only hairy, sweaty men. To her surprise, he agrees, saying that Ares is a full-fledged adventurer, which causes Sicha to get furious, and she scolds him for trusting people so easily. Furthermore, Sicha lets him know that she already won the bet as Ares left the town himself. Hearing this starts making Slad feel uneasy as he's aware that at least 2 members are needed on the front line, and in a state of emergency, he might not be able to protect the rear guard, which could result in them getting wiped out. Nonetheless, he complains to Sicha about the bet, as she already knew the answer, to which she replies that she was betting the same even before the results were out. However, Sicha decides to forgive him if he listens to her third story, and while enjoying a delicious beefsteak, Sicha lets them know that she will be joining his party and introduces herself to Ethica. Ethica freaks out after hearing that Slad is a former member of the hero's party, as he always looked like an average Joe with a disastrous haircut. Later that day, the 3 of them head towards the hero's party, and Sicha teases Slad for helping the person who kicked him out of the party for the Huzz, but at the same time, she can't disagree as Slad's the party leader. Based on their discussion, Ethica mentions that the hero seems like someone who does some pretty crazy stuff, to which Slad agrees, saying that he could be a bit mischievous sometimes. Sicha intervenes, saying that calling him mischievous is like giving him a compliment, and adds that she wouldn't be surprised if he were using the other 2 girls as decoys. After continuously hearing them badmouth Ares, Ethica puts the hero aside and decides to help the other 2 girls. Just then, Slad tells Ethica to ask her spirit and stop the wind, and when she asks if something happened, he replies that Sicha might have found something. To their surprise, she indeed found something, and it was Rimuri's hat. Seeing this, Sicha starts to panic as her prediction was correct and runs forward. When Ethica tells Slad that it should be fine as Rimuri herself isn't present, Slad disagrees, telling her that Rimuri would never leave this precious gift from her mother behind. Before long, Sitcha returns and tells Slad that Ares and the others aren't here, and there are no monster corpses or footprints either. Slad figures that the battle was going on in the distance, and the hat was blown off. Nonetheless, both of them decide to go back to their track, and when Ethica asks why they are so calm when one of their friends might have died, Sitcha tells her that they act this way because they understand their roles. She further says that if Ethica continues being an adventurer, she will understand soon as well. Later, Ethica comes up to Slad and apologizes, but he doesn't seem to mind and lets her know that he was pretty stressed, but Sitcha's advice helped him calm down. Apparently, Sitcha usually speaks in quite a provocative tone, but in situations like this, her voice becomes calm, and due to this, the whole party becomes calm as well, including Ares. Furthermore, Ethica informs Slad that Sitcha was talking about a prediction, and while she isn't suspicious of her, Ethica can't seem to forget the cold look Sitcha had on her face. But Slad replies that Sitcha is a good person, and although she is greedy for money, she always sneaks the money she earns into the pockets of the sick and injured. Sometimes she can have a cold expression, but it's not directed towards anyone, and he doesn't believe anything until Sitcha speaks for herself. Sitcha, who heard everything, gets beet red and forces them to continue their journey. After taking a look around, Sitcha mentions that Rimuri is probably safe as there's no sign of her being buried. This comes as a relief to Slad, who concludes that she must have been unconscious as Rimuri wouldn't have left her hat behind otherwise. Worried, Ethica asks if it's serious, to which Sitcha replies that she found a small amount of blood, but as long as she's alive, Rimuri could have healed her injuries. Just then, they notice some strange footprints on the ground, and Sitcha recognizes them as Desia's unique skill, named No Second Strike, a skill that one-shots the enemy. In this world, the Demon King appeared 50 years ago, and because of him, the monsters went berserk and waged wars on the other species. Not only that, but he enveloped the world in miasma and cast a certain spell that could transform the dead corpses into the undead. If any corpse is left unattended, there's a risk of it becoming undead, so usually a priest is dispatched for mourning rites. However, there are no signs of such a thing happening, which means Rimuri must still be alive. Additionally, they saw the marks on the ground which were caused by Desia's unique skill, and after hearing about what it's capable of, Ethica figures that she must be the strongest. But Slad disagrees, saying that a Saintess is not a fighter and must stay in the rearguard. While this unique skill of hers is pretty powerful, Desia herself doesn't have any other fighting ability, which means there's no way she would have been able to hit the monster if she were alone. Lastly, he advises Ethica to keep this conversation a secret from Desia, as her unique skill is considered a delicate topic. Following that, Sitcha notices that there are only 2 footsteps, which means Desia must have been carrying Rimuri on her back, so she believes they can catch up to them soon. On the other hand, Ares is getting completely wrecked by the wyvern and realizes that it's much stronger as compared to the last one they fought. Suddenly, his body starts feeling weird, and Desia starts working on curing the poison that entered his body. In the meantime, the wyvern flies in the sky and prepares for another attack, but Rimuri manages to attack it using her skill named Wind Cutter, which is highly effective against flying enemies. However, unlike last time, this skill is not enough to bring the wyvern down. That wyvern then counterattacks, and after pushing Rimuri into a corner, it appears right in front of her. Meanwhile, instead of helping her out, Ares decides to get out of there as he figures that she will be dying sooner or later. While he regrets not getting a taste of her cake, Ares couldn't care less about her life. Just when the wyvern is about to turn Rimuri into minced meat, Desia appears and uses her unique skill to eliminate the wyvern once and for all. Following that, she is really grateful that she managed to land the attack and notices Rimuri lying on the floor, calling Slad's name. Desia thinks back to the time when Slad protected her from an explosion, even though he had no armor and was just a bag carrier. Seeing that the wyvern has been defeated, Ares shamefully returns after hiding behind the bushes this whole time. He mentions how Desia is more suited to being a fighter, and when Desia confronts him for not protecting her, as he's the only one who could have done it, Ares replies that the distance was out of the range of his sacred sword. Desia argues that a hero should be able to use Wind Cutter, and instead of apologizing, Ares mentions that it felt so good to cut the monsters down with his sword that he completely forgot about his skills. Furthermore, he mentions that it doesn't matter if Rimuri lives or dies, as he can still use magic to defeat the monsters. Furious, Desia lands a sucker punch on his chopped face, calling Ares the lowest of the low. Ares gets angry and questions what he did to deserve to be hit. However, she totally ignores him and suggests taking Rimuri to a safe place. But little does she know that Ares has other plans as he wants to dive into her pants tonight. He has decided to do it after they remove their equipment and plans on feeding them to some monsters to silence them after he's done. On the other hand, Ethica points at a house in the woods, making Sitcha impressed that Ethica found it before she did. With that, they end up in front of the house, and Slad, who notices 2 footprints in front of it, wonders what happened to the people who own the mansion. Sicha adds the fact that it rained in the area recently, so it's not really unusual. Just when they are about to go inside, Ethica asks if they are really entering the mansion, and when Slad questions if something is wrong, Ethica replies that she's got a bad feeling as the spirits are too quiet. This makes Slad ask Sicha to scout the entrance like she does for dungeons, and when Ethica says that it was just a feeling, Slad advises her to always trust her gut. Even if nothing is wrong, it's best for them to check it beforehand. Soon after, Sicha returns, informing them that the mansion itself is a monster. She then asks if Slad knew about it, to which he disagrees and says that there are 3 types of monsters that pretend to be a building. One of them is called the Imitation House, and the other one is called the Ghost Mansion. While sitting around a campfire, Slad remembers that they have come across an imitation house before, and Sicha adds that if it were just Ares, they would have fallen for it. But there's no way Desea would have allowed something like that to happen. Additionally, if it were a ghost mansion, Desea would have noticed it instantly due to her passive undead detection skill. Seeing that there are no traces of the houses he mentioned, Slad figures that it must be the 3rd type. That's called the Nightmare Fairy. Sicha freaks out after hearing the word unique monsters and hides behind a tree, asking if he's talking about the dangerous beings that appear in the legends. Slad agrees and thinks about how only 16 unique monsters have been recorded, and all of them have strength equal to the gods. He then explains that the Nightmare Fairy is a monster from another world, and it's a unique monster that's sometimes revered as a god. However, that mansion isn't the Nightmare Fairy's main body, but rather a clone projection of it. Still freaked out, Sicha mentions that she just touched the door of that mansion, and Slad believes that she will probably be fine. Sicha screams at him, asking what he means by probably, to which Slad replies that it's a monster that doesn't harbor any ill will, and it shouldn't be an issue just because she touched it. This comes as a relief to Sicha, who figures that it's probably not under the influence of the Demon Lord. But Slad argues that it doesn't completely align with their values either, as whether one returns alive from the Nightmare Fairy's dream depends on that person's luck. The general rule is that if a person enters that mansion, he or she will never wake up. After hearing this, Sicha decides to take her leave, and when Ethica tries to stop her, Sicha lets her know that it's a unique monster and basically another Demon King. Confused, Ethica asks why she's talking about the Demon King, and gets told by Ethica that the Demon King that's been transforming their world into a slaughterhouse using its miasma is the weakest of all the 16 unique monsters. While both the girls are in shock, Slad reveals that the Nightmare Fairy is rank B, which means it's right in the middle, strength-wise. However, Sicha doesn't care about any of that and mentions that they are practically newbies compared to it. Furthermore, she suggests waiting for the hero's party to return, and while Slad believes that he's not sure about the girls, it's practically impossible for Ares. Apparently, the Nightmare Fairy shows the person their own ideals and portrays them in the form of a dream. With that being said, Slad gets up and mentions that they will deal with it somehow. Sicha gets furious and asks where he gets that kind of confidence, and Slad lets her know that his old party once defeated a unique monster. After hearing this, both of them scream in surprise, and Slad further adds that even though he didn't do anything impressive against it, he still became quite famous on the old continent. Nonetheless, he decides to speak with the Nightmare Fairy to see if he can convince it to return everyone safely. Sicha gets shocked after hearing this and decides to just stay outside and deal with the aftermath. Meanwhile, Slad tells Ethica not to enter the mansion by any means and asks her to inform the Empire if he doesn't return. Ethica then apologizes for not being useful, to which Slad replies, saying that she doesn't have to think that way. As if she weren't here, they might have been trapped in their dreams without realizing it. Furthermore, he reminds her about what Sicha talked about regarding roles in the party, and lets her know that Ethica has been fulfilling her role. With that being said, Slad knocks on the door of the mansion, and before long, the door opens, and the Nightmare Fairy appears in front of him. She gets impressed by Slad as most people tend to forget that they are in a dream, unlike him. But Slad lets her know that he has no intention of being consumed by a dream. But even if that's the case, the Nightmare Fairy is surprised by the fact that Slad's first wish is to talk to her. Following that, she decides to give him the best treatment, and makes a ton of tasty food appear right in front of him. She then asks him to eat as much as he likes, and when Slad argues that it's only a dream, the Nightmare Fairy informs him that whatever happens in the dream affects his body in real life too. Which means if he were to die in the dream, he would die in real life as well. After hearing this, Slad doesn't waste any time and starts devouring all the food present in front of him. However, it doesn't take long for him to realize that he almost fell into her trap and begin to wonder how he's going to wake up from this dream in the first place. The fairy replies, saying that all he has to do is wish that he wakes up. But she believes that there's no reason for him to do that since, in this place, the peaceful life he has been dreaming about is possible. Following that, the fairy makes Ethica appear in front of him, and to his surprise, she is not even covering her pepperonis this time. Ethica then starts getting close to him, suggesting they do whatever he likes and reassure him that breaking a bed or two isn't a bad thing. Furthermore, she presses her soft racks against him, telling Slad that since this is a dream, the real Ithaca won't be affected. But luckily, Slad manages to push her away as he already had the time of his life last night, which makes the fairy a bit disappointed. She then asks what Slad wants to talk to her about, to which Slad replies that he came to wake the heroes up. But the fairy replies that he can't, as for them to wake up, those people need to decide to do it on their own. Just then, she notices that Slad is thinking about something absurd, and informs him that she needs to hear him say his wish aloud for her to grant it. Slad then decides to tell her, and asks the fairy to let him enter all of their dreams. With that being said, Slad finds himself standing in a forest, and soon after, the fairy also appears, excited as she wasn't expecting him to call her into another person's dream. When Slad asks if this is really something she needs to be so excited about, the fairy replies that there are not many people who want to encounter her in a dream. Furthermore, she informs him that it's Rimuri's dream, and when Slad mentions that he feels bad barging in like this, the fairy lets him know that she wanted to see him the most. On the other hand, Ithaca starts to wonder why Slad is keeping his skill a secret from the heroes' party, and when Sicha asks why she's suddenly thinking about that, Ithaca replies that she's been curious about it ever since she heard about the heroes' party. She believes that Slad must have known that if someone like him left the party, they would have been in real trouble. Furthermore, Ithaca tells Sicha that originally, she didn't feel the effects of the buff and brushed it off as the spirits being in a good condition. Sicha mentions that this is the problem with Slad's skill, as it took her a whole month to realize that she was getting buffed by him. She further adds that Slad wouldn't have told them about it if he didn't trust them enough, as he even used it in public when he was trying to help Ithaca out. If that's the case, Sicha doesn't think keeping his skill a secret is important to Slad, and if they talk about the reason, even she has no idea. Sicha then mentions that maybe Slad has taken a liking to her cakes, which causes Ithaca to blush, and she mentions that hearing this makes her happy. Additionally, Ithaca wonders why he always acts so humble despite having such an amazing skill, to which Sicha replies, saying that Slad really sees himself as average. Seeing that Ithaca is having a hard time believing this, Sicha decides to give her an example and tells Ithaca to imagine herself without being the spirit priestess. Ithaca replies that it would be extremely difficult for her, to which Sicha agrees, saying that she's gotten used to her powers. But a rare skill and a unique skill can't be viewed as a different entity from the skill holder. It is the case especially for unique skills, as it's something he is born with. Since the skill is an identity of the skill holder himself, having this unique skill is normal for Slad. This makes Ithaca realize that the skill is an identity of the skill holder himself, and Ithaca adds, saying that Slad doesn't use his skill. The interesting part is that his skill is automated, and it activates regardless of his will. Even if that's not the whole reason, it's obvious to Sicha that Slad doesn't think of himself as amazing, which makes Ithaca mention how she feels bad for him. However, Sicha has a different point of view as she is rather envious of him. The reason is that Slad isn't aware when his ability is active, so he's free from the weight that comes with having a skill. This also means that Slad never gets carried away or overly relies on his skills. Elsewhere, Slad, along with the fairy, notices someone wearing Rimuri's hat and gets told by the fairy that it's her mother, who passed away. Slad realizes that one of the kids should be Rimuri, but since she is a half-demon, he can't understand why her skin color isn't bluish-white. Nonetheless, the fairy then asks what Slad plans to do, and without thinking much, he walks up to Rimuri's mother and greets her in a pretty awkward manner. Her mother greets him back, asking how she can be of help. Suddenly, Rimuri comes running and gives Slad a hug, saying that she really likes Uncle Slad. He pats her head and lets her know that he likes her a lot as well. Furthermore, Slad informs Rimuri that she is currently inside a dream and needs to go back. But when he asks if she wants to come with him, Rimuri refuses and runs away. Thinking about her current circumstances, Slad starts feeling bad for trying to get her out of the dream and tells her mother that he will be back later. However, Rimuri doesn't like it and asks Slad to stay as she wants to be with both Slad and her mother. Before Slad gets a chance to reply, the other kid who was playing with Rimuri grabs his arm, telling Slad that she agrees with her as well. Slad begins to wonder if she is Rimuri's younger sister, but eventually lets the girls know that he needs to visit other people, as he is not a part of Rimuri's dream. With that being said, Slad apologizes and starts walking away when suddenly, the atmosphere changes, and Slad notices the real and busty Rimuri he has known standing behind him, saying that she doesn't want him to leave. Seeing her skin color, Slad mentions that she must have hated having demon blood running in her, to which she agrees. Slad starts to wonder if there's a painful memory that's causing Rimuri to deny her own existence, and asks if she remembers what she said before. Rimuri replies by saying that there's no way she'd forget and remember all the times she was mocked and bullied for having demon blood. However, Slad was the only one who accepted her, and now she wants him to say those words once again. With that, Slad puts his hand forward and tells Rimuri that it's okay to be who she is. Hearing this brings tears to her eyes, and she grabs his hand as well. He then questions if he reminded her of what Rimuri wanted to do, to which she agrees, telling him that it's for her to defeat the Demon King, and for all the half-demons to be accepted, including her. Afterward, they both prepare to return, and Rimuri lets the fairy know that it's time for her to wake up from this dream. Before long, the two of them exit the mansion while holding each other's hands. With a smile on her face, Rimuri greets Slad by saying good morning, but instantly gets embarrassed afterward, reminding Slad that this is how she's usually like. Nonetheless, he pats her head, talking about her missing hat, and at the same time, Sicha walks up to her. Rimuri gets surprised seeing her and asks Sicha where she was, to which Sicha replies, saying that it will take some time to explain. After that, she hands Rimuri her hat, but Rimuri gets a bit disappointed after seeing it in such a bad state and begins apologizing to her mother. Just then, Ethica intervenes and says that it will be fixed immediately if she lets one of her spirits deal with it. Surprised, Rimuri asks who she is, to which Ethica replies that she's Slad's new companion. Rimuri instantly looks her up from head to toe and gets shocked after seeing the difference in their milkers. Following that, Ethica grabs her hand and mentions that while she doesn't have a house here, if she finds the spirit of a house somewhere, her hat can be restored to its former state. Rimuri gets excited hearing this, and just like that, the two of them become friends. Meanwhile, Sicha tells Slad to share some information before they return to the mansion. To start things off, he informs Rimuri that it was Ares who chased him out, and Sicha adds the fact that Ares is moving pretty predictably. Rimuri then informed them about everything that happened, including their fight with the Wyvern, how she nearly died, how Dacia protected her, and how Ares insisted on staying in the mansion for the night. Even though Dacia wanted to stop him, she was forced to comply in order to let Rimuri rest. Hearing this causes both Ethica and Sicha to call Ares some words that even the 2017 PewDiePie was scared to say. However, Slad reminds them that Ares is still the hero, and they can't seem to argue with that. Curious, Ethica asks if the hero is really that important, and this makes Rimuri realize that there are still some people in the dark. She then informs Ethica that the Demon King is immortal, and the power scale is completely different from other races. Additionally, it's making the monsters more savage and controlling them to fight against the different races. In the past, they always had a cordial relationship with the demons, and in order to defeat the immortal Demon King, the hero's holy sword is necessary, and that hero is Ares. After hearing the whole story, Ethica understands everything and apologizes to Rimuri for making her say all that. But Rimuri lets her know that it's not her fault, but the fault of the Demon King and Ares. She then concludes that this complete and utter scum of a man is the only one who can save the world, but Rimuri believes that it might not be the case. The hero's skill isn't unique, but a rare skill, and it might be possible for someone other than Ares to have it as well. However, Sicha argues that while it's not a unique skill, that skill is still so rare that only one has appeared in these several hundred years. Rimuri agrees and remembers that there's no record of two heroes appearing in the same era, but she still chooses not to lose hope. She then wonders what would happen if Slad were the hero, but he lets her know that he's just a jobless person. This annoys Rimuri, and after hugging him, she lets Slad know that, at least to her, he is her jobless hero. Sicha also tells Slad that his achievements are more impressive than the hero, as not only did he wake up from the Nightmare Fairy's dream, but he also managed to bring back Dacia. Slad argues that the fairy was quite cooperative and asks them to keep this a secret, as if he were to become famous on this continent as well, then he wouldn't have any other place to go. Eventually, Rimuri makes up her mind and lets everyone know that she will be becoming Slad's companion as well. Sicha asks if that's okay, as the Demon King can only be defeated with the hero's sword, and wonders if she's giving up on her dream. But Rimuri replies that there must be another way, and she hasn't given up yet. After hearing this, Sicha smiles and realizes the reason Slad wanted to chase after Ares. She further mentions that she truly regretted leaving the party after finding Rimuri's hat, and for the fact that she was naive, Sicha apologizes. But seeing both Rimuri and Ethica confused, Sicha tells Slad to explain. He informs them that Sicha wanted Ares to reflect on himself and make him realize how precious his companions were. But to his surprise, Sicha headbutted him, saying that it's completely wrong, as all she wanted was for Dacia and Rimuri to give up on Ares as well. She knew that Ares wasn't strong enough to defeat the Demon King, so there's no reason for them to stick around when he can't even save the world. Slad questions if Ares is weak, which annoys Sicha even more, and she kicks him away, saying that he should be more aware of his own skills. Confused, Rimuri asks what she's talking about, and after getting to know everything, Rimuri starts clinging to Slad, calling him her hero. Nonetheless, Slad decides to go save Dacia now, and just as he is about to walk away, Sicha mentions that she still has doubts about defeating the Demon Lord with a holy sword. But one day, she still plans on creating a Demon King subjugation party with Slad at its core. With that being said, Slad enters the mansion again and gets greeted by the fairy. He realizes that they are not inside the mansion, to which the fairy replies that she already knew what he wished for. Furthermore, she points towards a house, telling Slad that the whole world and that house are all dreams of Desea. Not only that, but since Desea has a big heart, the fairy didn't have any issues including him in her dreams, which makes Slad realize that this is the eligibility to appear in dreams. Nonetheless, he thanks her by calling the fairy Nye, which comes as a surprise to her. Slad wonders if she doesn't like it, but Nye replies that she does and will be calling herself Nye from now on as well. Afterward, Slad asks Nye if she can't access information in relation to herself, which confuses her, and she informs him that the only thing she knows is his wishes. Slad realizes that the shape of the dream is not determined by the fairy, as she only shapes his dreams into reality. Her reason for living is to turn their happy dreams into a reality, so there's no reason for the fairy to have an existing form. After hearing this, Slad wonders if it sounds so sad because he's a human, and is aware that her existence itself is beyond human understanding, which makes her a unique monster. Nye further mentions that when Slad speaks to her, it is conveyed to her main body, and her feelings of happiness are real, not because he dreamt of it. To his surprise, Nye says that Slad fulfilled one of her dreams as well, and when he asks what she means, Nye decides not to elaborate and advises him to fulfill his own dream. Before long, he enters the building, and after noticing the atmosphere around that place, he realizes that it's a shrine. However, this place is nothing like a normal shrine, as there aren't any priests but monks. After going deeper into the building, he eventually comes across Desea, who seems to be busy training. The first thing he notices is that, while she looks exactly like the Desea he knows, she isn't wearing her usual clergy robe, but rather the same training robes as the monks around her. Even for someone like Slad, when he first saw the sight of her praying, it allowed him to feel the presence of God, but currently he doesn't feel anything from her. He figures that it won't be as easy as Rimuri's dream, as this is a place he is not supposed to be in. This situation is exactly what Nye meant by the difference between whether he is welcome or not. Ultimately, he says her name, and without wasting a second, she instantly charges him. Luckily, Slad manages to dodge most of her attacks, but fails to do so when she tries hitting him with a roundhouse kick. Seeing this makes Slad realize that this is Desea's ideal form of herself, but since he is able to dodge, it means that his fully automated debuff has activated. Nonetheless, Slad continues running away from her, but can't seem to understand what might happen if she uses her unique skill, as Slad has no clue if his debuff skill is strong enough to block it. He figures that it might be the end for him, but just then, Slad remembers that the dreams are connected to reality, which means Desea might die from his skills as well. Having no other choice, he manages to block her attack and questions the reason she is attacking him. He reminds her that the two of them are friends, to which Desea agrees and says that this is exactly the reason she wants to hit him at least once. Suddenly, the debuff skill takes effect, and after screaming in pain, she falls onto the ground. Slad admits his fault and asks her to stop, but she doesn't believe him and thinks that he's lying. Slad replies that even if she says that, he has no clue why she's trying to attack him. Desea lets him know that it's because he left so suddenly without mentioning a word, and yells at him, saying that she trusted him. Unexpectedly, her mood takes a 180-degree turn, and she returns to her normal self. Following that, Slad informs her about everything that happened to him and how Ares kicked him out. However, Desea still complains about him leaving without saying a word and regrets not hitting him before. Slad starts feeling bad about calling them his friends, but still letting them down, and with a change of mind, promises Desea that he will never disappear on her again. After that, Slad explains everything related to the mansion and how they are in a dream, but Desea doesn't believe it and says that for a dream, this place is too vivid and realistic. Slad suggests taking a look around if she thinks that way, to which she agrees, but after taking a walk around, Desea mentions that it's pretty normal to her, while Slad freaks out as all the monks have now turned into priests. Realizing that there's something strange about it, Slad tries talking to some of the priests, but every single one of them ignores him like freaky performers ignore a broke guy. After thinking hard about their current situation, Slad figures that she must have dreamed about priests who would ignore them. Following that, Desea asks if he's done, as she'd like to go back to training. When Slad asks her the reason, she replies that she needs to train in the garden because she's a monk. This made Slad understand what's going on, as he figured she might remember who she is if she remembers him and the heroes' party. With that, he tries reminding Desea that she's actually a saintess. But when Desea argues that she was a monk from the beginning, Slad lets her know that it's all for defeating the Demon Lord, and when he asks Desea about her reasons, she replies that everyone wanted that from her. They smile whenever she gives it her all and praise her for doing a good job. Slad then asks Desea if everyone includes her as well, and wonders if she remembers the time she healed his wounds. Luckily, she seems to remember it vividly and mocks him for doing something so reckless. Slad then thanks her for what she did, letting Desea know that he's glad she's still the kind of person he knows. Eventually, he informs her that monks can't use healing magic, causing Desea to deny it when, unexpectedly, all the priests appear, asking her to defeat the Demon Lord alongside the hero. This results in Desea tearing up while Slad apologizes for making her remember all that. Nonetheless, this helps her remember that she used to be a saint. However, Slad still gives her the choice to stay a monk and not return to the old world. Suddenly, the atmosphere changes, and they find themselves in a bar where Desea mentions that she has to make the most of that unique skill she has. Furthermore, she tells Slad that he is the only person who's ever offered her a real choice like that, to which Slad replies that his answer is the same as it was back then. With that, the scene once again changes, and this time, Desea finds herself in her saint outfit, standing in front of the priest, promising to bring down the Demon Lord and restore peace. Ultimately, her dream comes to an end, and Slad finds himself lying on her lap. He instantly gets away from her, and seeing the mansion makes Desea realize that it really was a dream. Slad then mentions that he never knew she wanted to be a monk, and Desea replies, saying that it's not quite it either, as she has always done what others expected of her. Due to this, Desea always asked if that was truly her own desire, and that's why she just wanted a wish of her own. Later, the two of them unite with the others, and instead of greeting Desea first, all the Huz jump onto Slad. After they are done exchanging information, Desea suggests saving Ares as well, but the others disagree, wanting him to stay in his dream state. Desea argues that they can't just toss aside the only person capable of defeating the Demon Lord. Annoyed, Rimuri comments on how Desea is not budging, to which she agrees, saying that guiding the hero and saving the world is her mission. She further mentions that it doesn't matter if Ares was strong due to Slad's skills, as the only one who can wield the holy sword is Ares. So they must control the hero and force him to defeat the Demon Lord. However, Seicha still refuses to go along with this plan, and so does Rimuri, who refuses to follow Ares anymore. Desea gets disappointed seeing them not understand her and asks Slad what he is thinking. Slad replies that he is thinking of a way to wake Ares up, which makes Desea wonder if he will join the hero's party again. Slad mentions that he will if Ares is okay with it, but he has a condition, that is for them to keep his skill a secret from Ares. But to his surprise, Desea gets furious after hearing this and begins yelling at Slad, asking if he really hates the idea of his skill getting known that much. Furthermore, she lets him know that skills are meant to be used properly for the good of everyone, but Slad tells Desea that it's not how he thinks. Annoyed, Desea asks what he means, to which Slad replies that if Ares finds out about his skill, he will stop fighting altogether. Do you believe saving Ares is really a good idea? Comment buff if you'd like a part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in and we'll catch you in the next one.